Hello, everyone. Dear ladies and gentlemen, my name is Doris Bell. I'm a PhD in Biology and Toxicology. And today I will give you a talk. Hello.
Let me introduce you to our audience. Welcome to the Global Virtual Summit 2026. Uh, Before going to start our session, I would like to introduce to our audience with a bio. Doris Bell, PhD, is a systematic business coach specializing in transforming energy mastery for professionals and leaders with over 25 years experience across industry, academia, and the public sector. She leverages neuroscience, psychology, and systematic coaching to help high-performing individuals achieve clarity, energy, and align success through her GLOW method and energy mastery journey. Doris empowers leaders to release limiting patterns, regulate their nervous systems, and creating meaningful impact without burnout. That was a wonderful bio, Doris. The stage is all yours.
Okay, yeah. Hello, everyone. Dear ladies and gentlemen, my name is Doris Bell. I'm PhD in Biology and Toxicology. And as Melinda already said, today I want to lead you through a talk which is titled Beyond Soft Skills, the Biology of Future-Ready Leadership. And for many years, I have been working as a certified NLP master coach and systemic business coach and a mentor and speaker. And currently I became also an author. And some of my clients I take also on retreats, on transformative retreats. And one of my focus is stress resilience and energy mastery. And when I work with high performers, I often see that they do not take stress and their health serious. Yeah. So they do not consider rest as an important issue because they think this is just something for people burned out. And today I want to guide you through the biology of stress. And at the end of my talk, I hope that you understand that knowing your biology is very important for long-term performance. So my aim is that you agree with me that biology matters for leadership especially. And for this, we will explore how stress mechanisms influence performance and health. And I will introduce the 3 biological skills required for sustainable leadership and high performance. And as women have other realities as men, today I will focus on female leadership. So, what is our modern working environment alike? Most of us have a lot to care about. We have this constant availability. We have a lot of cognitive output to give. We have high emotional labors because we are responsible for teams, for results, for families. We live in a very complex environment. And many of us, especially those with responsibility, they still operate under high and chronic stress, but they do not notice that they have that stress, and their system remains quite okay, but until they break down. Yeah, and despite performing so in a complex environment, we often do not acknowledge the stress, as I said. And this is because we have been told that stress has something to do with weakness. Maybe you agree. But we should not downplay stress, because under constant stress, without sufficient rest, the stress even compounds and makes it more and more difficult to take smart decisions. And some people under stress, they even lose their patience quite easily. And let's be clear, stress is affecting your CEO, your brain, because neuroscience tells us that without physical and mental rest, the brain cannot properly process information and not regulate emotions. Let us dive a bit deeper into neuroscience. And I will show you why it is helpful to better understand your body and your brain. There is this small structure in the heart of the brain, not bigger than an almond, called hypothalamus. And together with the pituitary gland and the adrenal cortex of your renal, they build together the so-called HPA axis. And this HPA axis is a neuroendocrine system that mediates stress response. It's one of the two major systems. I will come to this other one in a minute. So that HPA system axis that regulates a lot of body processes, including the digestion, the immune response, and all these things. And if it is chronically activated, then it is even altered. So it becomes dysfunctional. In a healthy situation, if it is short-term stress response, it just increases cortisol level, your heart rate goes up, and the glucose. And that is important for any kind of stress response. You have probably heard about this, the fight or flight response that helps us humans to react to dangerous situations. So besides this HPA axis, we also have the purely neural stress response, and that is managed by our autonomous nervous system. So in this ANS, this autonomous nervous system, which mainly runs or largely runs unconsciously, we have two major parts, the sympathicus nerve and the parasympathicus nervous system. And while the sympathicus nervous system is important for activation and alertness, the parasympathicus is more or less the counterplay, and it is important for recovery and regulation, and it helps in the body for digestion and a lot of these autonomous bodily functions. And one important part of the parasympathicus is the vagus nerve. And I will come back to this later. But I can tell you already that the vagus nerve is a very important piece for the downregulation of your autonomous nerve system. And in stress situations, it is the sympathicus that is activated, and it is very important that also the sympathicus gets less activated, so can downregulate, and the parasympathicus gets activated. And for sustainable performance, it is really required that the parasympathicus can recover, because otherwise your blood pressure will be up all the time, your heart rate, and that takes between 20 to 60 minutes after a stress response to recover, because also the chemicals that have been released, like adrenaline, noradrenaline, and cortisol, they need to get washed out of the bloodstream again. As shown on the previous slides, so stress is not just a feeling but biology. And it is the hormonal and the autonomic balance that needs to recover. Otherwise, you are under chronic pressure. And this means your cortisol level remain elevated. So your sympathicus is dominant all the time. You will even adapt to chronic stress. And you can still function for a while, but as you can see on the graph on the right-hand side, um, that the recovery will be reduced over time because the physiological homeostasis is no longer there or is impaired. So why is this so important? Why is it so problematic? This has to do with another structure in the brain, and this is the hippocampus. The hippocampus, as shown in orange, you can see it on the right-hand side on the graph. The hippocampus is part of the limbic system, and that is important for context evaluation, so for advanced cognition, for flexible cognition, for learning, and for empathy. Yeah. And it is highly sensitive to cortisol. It has a sensor, so it can, in healthy state, downregulate your stress response because you might have been alert, and then the hippocampus can tell you, "Come on, it's not so not so important. You can calm down." So with the cognition in place, it can reduce immediately, very soon, your stress response so that the chemical cascade will even not start. That is the healthy state. But in chronic stress with an elevated cortisol level all the time, the capacity of this cognitive stress downregulation that is impaired, and the neural plasticity and the neurogenesis are reduced, which means that your brain will not build new nerve cells, which usually in some parts of the brain still happen even in adulthood. So, as said, under chronic stress, your neuroplasticity is reduced, the neurogenesis, empathy, and decision making. And I think you would agree that these are important traits for good leadership. There is another important aspect to consider, and this is the internal reward system. In healthy state, there is this transmitter dopamine, and dopamine is also released in the limbic system of the brain, mainly after kind of little unexpected rewards, when you have finished a task, when you get positive surprises. Then dopamine is released, and this gives you a feeling of satisfaction and happiness. But under chronic stress, this dopamine release is suppressed, which means your motivation is reduced, and you even cannot feel any kind of reward. And then the brain seeks for little tiny short-term reliefs, and that can be that you start scrolling on your mobile, that you eat, or even for some people, substance use with alcohol, for example. And this stress loop, this creates even more craving for these little tiny rewards. And in fact, your satisfaction is reduced, you feel drained, and even if you have completed tasks, you don't feel satisfied anymore. So let me summarize until here. Chronic stress impacts your brain, your body, and your behavior. So allostatic load, this means the cumulative physical burden, which shows that sleep can be impaired, your metabolism, because you have a high glucose level all the time. You have maybe reduced immunity due to the high cortisol level. And then the cognitive effects, reduced cognitive flexibility. You cannot regulate your emotions as good as in without stress. You have reduced creativity, intuition, and impaired decision making. And on a subjective level, you feel drained, unfulfilled, and you might have fear of losing the control. And very important, transferred to work environment, stress is not only a personal thing, but stress spreads. In a healthy situation with a self-regulated leader, the leader can buffer stress to his or her team, and can enhance resilience and engagement and motivation for the team members. But a dysregulated leader will transmit her stress, which means all the team might feel a reduced psychological safety and trust, a reduced motivation and creativity. So it has a strong impact if a leader is not well regulated. And now I would like to turn to the really miraculous effects of sleep. Believe me, sleep is not a passive recovery. Sleep is really active neurological recalibration. We have different phases of sleep. So as you can see on the right-hand side, on the right graph, there are different sleep stages with different brain activities, so to say. So we have the deep sleep, which happens mainly in the first half of the night, where we have the metabolic balance to be restored. And then we have phases with this so-called rapid eye movement, the REM sleep, which is a very light sleep only. So you are almost awake, where we dream. And in that phase, we have our emotional and the memory network recalibrated. So both parts are important, and we go through several of these stages within one night. And what you can see on the left-hand slide is our cortisol levels. So there is usually this circadian rhythm that during the morning, the cortisol level rises, and this is good for us to make us awake and ready for the day. But then the cortisol level should decline, and in the evening or during the night, it's very low. And there is the counterplay, which is a hormone called melatonin, which is produced by the pituitary gland, and that increases during the afternoon, and then in the first part of the night during the sleep, and that helps you sleep, and also has some other biological functions. But if there is a chronic high cortisol level due to chronic stress, even that balance will be impaired, and melatonin will not be released in the amount as in healthy stage, which means that your sleep and your sleep pattern will be impaired. And that, even after one night of bad sleep, will impair your cognitive, your mental capacity, your cognitive flexibility. And the prefrontal cortex, so our thinking brain, will have problems to regulate, and the decision confidence will be reduced, and also your emotional stability. You know it maybe from yourself, after one or more nights with not with impaired sleep, you don't feel so well, and maybe you even lose the patience, and you are not that nice person that you used to be. So, what does this mean for a real leader? So, they often, because they ignore and deny that they are stressed, but many of them, I know when I speak with my clients, they have that kind of chronic sleep restriction. It really impairs the performance. It impairs the strategic decision making, your innovation capacity, your creativity, your emotional contextualization, your empathy, and also your own learning capacity. So people under high stress, under chronic stress, they get a bit rigid. So they are not that open for feedback. So I hope you agree with me that if the future ready leadership requires that your hippocampus is also healthy. We just come to one other aspect. This is genetics. For decades, scientists believed that all our abilities, our behavior, and our potential is hardwired in our genes. Yeah, you are born with it, and then you are determined with what you got. It's all in the genes. But research in epigenetics, that has shown that it is not the genes themselves, but rather the activation of the genes, the activity of the genes that influence um, all our life. And the point is, our genes get activated, influenced by our environment. And there are these famous twin studies where they could show that under a lot of same conditions, but twins were grown in different parenthoods and under different environment conditions. They, although they had the same DNA, the same genes, there were dramatic differences when they grew up. Yeah. So we can nowadays say that nutrition, relationship, lifestyle, stress, all that leaves biochemical marks, and that affect our gene functions. Yeah. And this is fundamentally, if you fully understand this, because it has helped us in our understanding also about performance, intelligence, performance, and resilience. So if our biology is environmentally responsive, then everything around us, including our work environment, shapes our biological regulation. So think about it in practical terms. Every meeting, every expectation, every deadline, every interpersonal interaction that you have is part of our environment, which means that every challenge, every expectation sends signals through our body, hormones, neurotransmitters, neural activation patterns. And all of this then affects how we perform, how flexible we can think, and how resilient we stay and we remain under pressure, like stress. And what is the environment we spend most of the time with? Well, this is ourselves. So, have you ever observed yourself, what you think and what you feel in situations? Maybe when a task or a negotiation, a discussion did not went the way you expected. What did you say to yourself then? I mean, the way we speak to ourselves and what we think about ourselves, this is greatly influenced by the early by our early life. Scientists know now that until the age of 7, our brain is, so to say, in a constant trance modus. And every input from the outside will get into our brain, into our conscious, without any filter. And that builds in later life our unconscious patterns. So these early beliefs, they will then go into our unconsciousness, and they will unfortunately influence our behavior as an adult. And there are some beliefs that might have been helpful in the childhood because they helped you to understand the world, understand your parents. But as an adult, you probably agree they are not that helpful. For example, if a little girl came to the thought that, oh, I am only valued if I achieve, if I do something, if I don't speak up, if I please others, I must perform to be accepted. So these are just examples of when I work with clients, what comes out. That is one of these, that are some of these underlying, very limiting beliefs. So if our nervous system drives our behavior and our beliefs drive our nervous system, then future-ready leadership must integrate both. So it's not just strategy, it's not just mindset, but you also need to have these biological skills, this biological literacy to start with. This is number one, to recognize your internal state and the stress patterns. And the second skill is the recovery competence. You should be able to actively restore your biological capacity. And this is more than sleep recovery. I will come to this on the next slide. And the third thing is your regulation capacity, so that you really shift from a reactive performance to an adaptive leadership. So this is how I see the biological skills, and this is what I use in my work being a mentor. So let me just explain this in some more detail, and I know that time is running. So there is number one, the biological awareness. So in practice, this means we recognize the internal state, we assess your stress load, and then we identify the hidden activation patterns. What triggers you so that you feel stressed? That is very individual. And then once we understand also the physiological triggers behind it, we can come to stage 2. The number 2 is the recovery optimization. So we rebuild the sleep architecture if there is a problem. We build strategies for your energy management. So that's one of my core tasks, that we check your energy levels, because if you feel drained, you cannot perform. And then we also look into your personal life, into the overall 24 hours, 7 days a week, over weeks we do this, and we design your sustainable workload pattern with a lot of feedback in the meantime. And the third thing is that we also work on your belief systems, check your response regulation, and build this so that you are then able to manage your subconscious patterns, and that you can shift your reaction consciously, so that you are able to manage your thoughts and your emotions. So that is overall, I call it the cognitive narrative reframing, and then your energy regulation. And with this, you will transform your stress response and these patterns to a more sustainable performance. So to conclude, I showed you today that biological literacy and regulation is an important strength, and that it will be a cutting-edge advantage for you as a leader to be able to regulate. And if this resonates with you, I'm happy to continue the conversation. So, and thank you for now for your attention. And I have put together here the ways you can contact me. I cordially invite you to join my Facebook group, Energy Mastery Circle, where you can also get in direct contact with me and some other high performers. And I can see that there are some questions. So if time allows, I will be happy to reply to some of your questions. I'm not sure, Melinda, will you moderate it, or shall I just go through the questions? There is one question: how is biological leadership different from traditional leadership models that focus mainly on soft skills? That's a good question. This is what I state, that first, soft skills are not enough. And on the other hand, one of the important soft skills is empathy, and a good way of communication. But if you are exhausted and your limbic system will not allow that because of hippocampus depletion, you cannot feel any more empathy. Even if you try, it will become harder and harder. And your cognitive flexibility will also be reduced. So that's why I state that, let's put it this way: soft skills are still important, but it's not all. It will not help you knowing about how you should do it. You will, at a certain point, if your recovery capacity is declining, you will no longer be able to use them.
What we have few questions from our audience. I'm asking
Yes, I'm reading through the
what
questions.
lifestyle.
What lifestyle changes most effectively restore healthy sleep? What
Architect.
lifestyle changes? Well, I can tell you from my own experience because I have gone through all this when I worked in corporate and also later in public administration. Um, uh, it is individually, but what many high performers have come to is meditation. Meditation will help restore your brain architecture, but you need to be kind of consistent with it. And this is also part then of my mentoring program to teach you how to meditate. But there are great teachers outside in the world. There is, just to give one word, Mind Valley, Vishen Laksani. He's, I would say, a master of all these skills. He's also teaching this to high performers. So if you ask many people, they all say this. And then, of course, it is what I call mastering your human instrument. This is really working on your becoming more conscious. So it's awareness work that we do to really understand, observe your thoughts, because we are like 5% conscious, 95% unconscious, and that you can change to a certain extent. Yeah. So thank you so much for your questions, and thank you for the time here. Yes. So I think with that, thank you to the team for the support here also. And with that, I think I'd like to conclude and have a nice day.
It was very informative session. We really enjoyed you. We gained a lot of knowledge from your session. Thank you. We have few more questions from our audience. We will share it to you in email.
Yeah,
Please stay on the
okay.
back. Please stay on the
Will
backstage.
there be the contacts then so that I can reply to people individually?
We will share it to you in email. You can
Okay,
answer
yeah,
there.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Please stay on the
Goodbye.
backstage.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.